Hey y'all, I'm back. I thought I would just sit here and talk with y'all for a little bit about some stuff while I got these pants for my oldest, for Jaden, and he is so thin but very tall. So I got him a size 30 waist, and he probably is about a size 28, but they don't, it's really hard to find size 28 pants with a 32 length, which is what he needs. And so instead of these were only $4.90 some cents at Costco, y'all. So I am going to take them in a little bit at the waist and make them comfortable for him so they fit his little waist. Actually, we and him have the same size waist. I just thought about that, but I don't know. I have to take his pants in so he can feel comfortable. And I thought I would just have a little conversation with y'all as I sit here and sew. It's so funny. Isn't it funny how you find yourself at a certain age and you start doing things that you never would have imagined you would be doing? Like, I'm sitting here in the corner about to alter some pants. And I have my little mini sewing kit because I lost during the move. It was so weird because I lost my sewing kit that I had a whole lot of things in because I used to actually try to sew. I have a sewing machine downstairs in the garage, and I used to collect all kinds of sewing supplies. And I don't know where my sewing kit went. I haven't seen it since then. So it's been a couple years. But anyway, I have a little makeshift, it will do sewing kit that I'm going to, with just a couple little needles and some thread, I'm going to take in his pants. Oh, I found some gray. Found some gray thread. Taking his pants a little bit on the sides so that he don't have to worry about them being all loose and stuff. Even with a belt, it's still not that comfortable if he has pants that are too big in the waist. So I'm gonna do this. But isn't it funny how I never, you find yourself doing all these things as time passes. I never could imagine I would be sitting in this corner sewing. It reminds me of my mom. My mom died, transitioned in 2021 during COVID. Not from COVID, but during COVID. And that is a little bit of a story. But anyhow, she taught me how to sew. And she loved sewing. She loved like all things to do with homemaking. Even though she was the breadwinner of my family for as long as I can remember, my dad was the stay-at-home dad, but she still was the one to like had recipes. Even though she didn't cook, she had all these recipe cards from that she kept when she was in school, high school, and back in the must have been about the late 60s, 70s, when they used to teach home economics. I took home economics too in high school, actually. But she took like the real home economics when they really got down and dirty and learned all these recipes and, you know, baked and all of the old school kind of recipes that are part of American cuisine. But she had all her recipe cards that she kept forever, and she would pull them out every now and then when she decided she wanted to try her hand at making biscuits or something like that. And the other thing she took was sewing in high school. I remember her telling me. And so she had pictures of her wearing her creations, like her dresses and things that she made in high school. And she passed it down to me, although I don't know how, I still don't think I know how to sew. I can do things to get by. Like I can put a hem in some pants and alter some things, very superficially. But I can't like make things. I tried that. That didn't work out. And I hate trying to use that sewing machine. Like the bobbing and weaving and threading and bobbing and all that stuff, that was not something that I enjoy doing. So, anyway, maybe one day I'll go back to it and I'll try it again. Um, I don't know, but right now I don't like it. So, let me see if my eyes can still thread a needle, y'all. I'm trying. My mother in law told me that once you start getting older, you can't coordinate those hands and eyes the same way that you could when you were younger. But I think I did this not too long ago, so I think I'm okay. Like I don't have to call the boys to do. Oh, look, I got it. I got it. I'm good. I'm not too bad yet. So so anyway, um yeah, so my mom taught me how to do the little sewing thing, and she taught me enough to get by, to make some um, repairs and things like that. But um, I miss her, and I appreciate so much um, all the stuff I got from her. I appreciate it, and that's the one thing that I wanted to talk to y'all about today. My mom used to always tell me, um, whenever me and my mom were super, super close. Super, I mean, she was my best friend. If I had to say I had a best friend, she was really my best friend. I mean, there were things that I couldn't talk to my mom about, that I would not talk to her about, that were, to me, not appropriate for that relationship. But for the most part, I would say about 90% of things about me, she knew. She knew. And I would always, be on the phone with her if she wasn't with me. I shared every single part of my life with her as much as possible. But anyhow, um, sometimes we would have hold on. My hubby is calling. I'm gonna pause y'all. All right. I had to pause y'all because hubby went for a walk and he was calling, and um I always have to answer when hubby's calling. Like, that's the thing, because I'm one of those people where I kind of um I'm high worry, I guess, even though I don't. I'm kind of high worry, but I'm not high worry. But I want to make sure that I'm there and available if somebody needs me, and I want to make sure that I know what's happening if somebody's calling on me. That's just kind of how I feel. That actually is what happened when my mom died. I was, working from home and having my virtual meetings that day, and I remember my dad was calling and calling, and I was like, "Oh, I got like 10 more minutes to this meeting, and when I'm done, I'll call him." And I got to thinking, but my dad doesn't usually call me, so let me answer. And so eventually, after he called a couple times, he left a voicemail. And so I told the person that I was meeting with, "Can you hold on a minute? Let me check my voicemail." And so the voicemail said that my mom had been rushed to the hospital with severe chest pain. And I ended the meeting at that point after I checked the message and I found that out. And so I talked to my dad after that. And I actually talked to my mom after that same day, and she said she was feeling better. She was at the hospital, and she was waiting for them to see her and check her out. She was in the emergency room. She was like on a stretcher in the hallway or something strange like that, because when you're low income and you go to low income um, places for services, sometimes it's like that. And so that was probably at like 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I talked to her probably a couple hours later after they rushed her to the hospital. And that night, I was living probably like an hour and a half away from her at that point. And I was struggling with some health issues myself. So I didn't get up and rush to go out there. Um, I was just kind of keeping tabs on things by phone. But by the time, I think I had talked to her again around 8 o'clock that night, and she still hadn't been seen. She was like waiting for hours to be seen. And I remember calling her before I went to bed that night around 10 o'clock, and I didn't get an answer from her. And so I called my dad, and he said, "Oh, I've been calling her too, and I didn't get an answer either." We couldn't be with her either at the time, because it was during the pandemic, and they weren't allowing folks to stay in the hospital with their loved ones. And so my dad, I think they lived like maybe a mile away from the hospital. He was at home, and so he ended up calling the doctor's desk, and that's when they told him that she had coded 5 times that night, and they apparently kept resuscitating her, and they ended up having to put her on life support, to where something was manually pumping her heart, and they intubated her so that she could breathe. And that's when I guess after they kept trying to revive her and they figured out, nope, she keeps dying after we revive her, they decided to run tests and found out that she had a pulmonary embolism. And um, there's more to it, but I was able to, immediately when I found that out at like 10 o'clock that night, I got on the road and went out to the hospital to see her. So, anyway, uh, when people call me, when loved ones call me, I answer. I answer because you just never know, right? And so that's one of those things that um, is on my heart all the time, and I share it with people because I feel like um, it's important, right now in my profession, um, I teach, right? I'm a trainer, I teach, I'm in front of lots of people on a regular basis, providing professional level training courses and things like that. And we're in the classroom sometimes 8 hours a day, right? Sometimes 3 hours, sometimes 8 hours, but enough time for life to happen around you outside of the classroom where you are isolated in the room and you won't even know about it unless you are connected to folks outside the classroom in some way. And so I know a lot of instructors and trainers and professors will tell folks in the room, right, the participants or the students, turn your phones off, silence your phones, don't get distracted by your phones, and this and that. And I recognize that that can be a real problem, but I also recognize that life is happening outside of this space that we're in, and we need to tend to it sometimes because nothing that we're talking about in that moment is as important as that phone call that I got from my dad that day when my mom was to transition. And I have kids. So I check my phone and I make sure I check on things even if I'm up in front of a group of people. I make time to check on a regular basis what's going on. If my kids are calling me and things like that. My kids are homeschooled. So, they're home with, my dad or their dad, hubby, if I'm not here. And so I like to make sure that I keep tabs on things. So anyway, hubby call, I have to answer. But anyway, back to the original, before I kind of went off there, back to the original point of what I was talking about with as I sew these pants. I haven't gotten nothing done. I stopped to to keep talking. So I'm gonna start working on it. But my mom used to always tell me, um, "You gonna miss me when I'm gone." Okay, she used to say that all the time. Like whenever we would have little spats, we never fought. We never had any deep arguments. We never went a day without talking to each other. But there were times where, I would have to be like, "Mom, I'm done. I don't even want to talk about this no more. I'm gone. I'm getting off the phone. I need a break." And she would do that too, right? And so she would, she would always say I was so mean. Um, and she would say, "You gonna miss me when I'm gone? Like you mean why you acting like that? You gonna miss me when I'm gone?" And it never really meant anything to me when she would say it until she was gone. until she was gone. And so now the meaning is strong. I'm telling you, the meaning is so strong. And I hear her saying that every day because Lord knows I do miss her. I miss her. I miss her. I miss her. And it's, somebody's calling, but that's not heavy, and I don't know who it is, so it's not important as far as I'm concerned. But anyway, um, cherish what you have, you know. Now, I'm not talking about folks who have, I know people were going to say, well, you don't know my mom. She did this, that to me, or you don't know my family or my sister. It's torture to deal with them. And I won't miss them when they're gone and blah, blah, blah. That's different. Okay. If that's you, don't worry about what I'm saying. Um, but I'm talking about like, folks who just have like small issues between them that are not really important. They don't matter at the end of the day. Actually, a lot of things don't matter at the end of the day. But um, cherish what you have. Cherish what you have. Soak it up. I almost kind of feel like you won't even be able to do that fully until you don't have that person or that relationship anymore, because it's almost like a rite of passage, as strange as that feels to say. But to experience loss, it really is a rite of passage. It's a rite of passage because you don't gain what you need to gain as far as understanding and wisdom until you experience loss. And if you think about it, it is a natural part of life. Life is not life unless it comes to an end. Does that make sense? Life is not life unless it has an end point or a completion, right? It has a beginning and it has an end. So, relish in all of the moments in life, especially with others, especially with your loved ones. Because you know, you don't know. You don't know when you're not gonna have it anymore. So get what you need from it and give what you need to it. I would have, if I could go back 20 years and talk to my 20 something year old self, I would have that conversation with me. And I would also have the conversation or a conversation about that whole experience of loss and death. It was something that I think, it's really weird because when my mom died, I had went through a period before she died, actually, for a long time, as far as I can remember in my adult life, especially after I had kids, it became very prominent. I had a lot of anxiety, like severe anxiety around death. And it was to the point where it would always occupy my mind. I was always worried. I was hyper alert and vigilant and all of these different things when it came to my kids. And it was almost debilitating emotionally and physically because it occupied my mind to the point where I couldn't really think about other things and be fully present the way that I needed to be. And so as part of the journey in working through how I felt about my mom's death, I knew I felt sad. I knew that. I knew I felt like a piece of me was gone. I knew I felt I don't know. I had all the feelings that you would expect someone would have if their mother died. But I also in my healing and in my journey to kind of grieve and deal with the loss, I wanted to make sense of it in a way where I learned something from it. And I feel like what I learned is that it needed to happen, right? I mean, like I said, life has to have a completion. Yes, so it needed to happen in that way, right? As a biological process. She had to die at some point, like we all do. But it also needed to happen in thinking about it in a little bit of a more of the bigger picture. It needed to happen so that I could grow in my relationship to death and how I think about it or how I thought about it. And I also needed to learn to depend more on what I could give myself as a being and not my attachment to her, right? I mean, the attachment is very important when you're young and you are learning to regulate emotions and feelings and things like that you can't do on your own when you're a certain age. But as you get older and you have already developed all the things you need to be a thriving adult, the attachment should be something different. Um, and so I realized as I look back at our relationship, we were, like I said, we were best friends. I depended on her so much for companionship and validation and all of the things that I needed to be providing for myself more. Um, and also thinking about, well, you also are married and you've been in a relationship for 20 plus years. And so what are you seeking outside of your relationship that you maybe should be getting from inside your relationship? So that's another thing too. So anyway, just some food for thought. Sometimes we hold on to people in ways that are not necessarily conducive to our growth as beings. Sometimes we have to learn the lessons that comes with or that come with losing folks. Losing folks. And so I also think about it the other way around. I think about how much I probably was holding her up from where she needed to go and what she needed to do. Even though she was in her late 60s and when she passed and she was retired and it seemed like she had all the time in the world to just listen to me and live life with me whenever I called, whenever I came over, brought the kids over, or whatever all of the things. It was such a relationship that hinged on my own self-centeredness, right? Like, how could she not love her daughter and want to be wrapped up in her life at any given moment whenever she wanted her to be wrapped up in it? And so I think about all of the years that, because of my need for her and the way that I was using her to fill whatever gaps I had, I think about how much I held her up to. Because the one thing about my mom that I loved is that she always had time for me. Always had time for me. Never, ever, ever ignored my phone calls, as far as I know. If she ignored them, she did a good job at making sure she got right back to me in enough time to where I didn't realize she was ignoring my phone calls. But anyway, she never ignored my phone calls, as far as I know. And she never told me I don't have time for this. I don't want to hear it. Um, Nothing like that. She always, even I'm sure a lot of times I sounded like I was losing my mind or saying crazy stuff or had crazy ideas or whatever. But she always was very um, available and comforting to me, regardless. And so, if she were here, and I believe in energy and presence, and I don't know how she's experiencing things right now, but I think she knows and feels my energy as I speak about her in this way right now. But if she were here, I would absolutely tell her this, because I've never told her anything like this, and I probably never realized it when she was here. So just kind of learning things in hindsight, for sure. Learning things in hindsight. So that's what's on my mind today. Um, it's been 3 years since she's been gone, um, since she transitioned, and so I just think about all of the things that I can learn from my relationship with her, and the loss, right, that I experienced with her. So just thinking about those things. So cherish what y'all have. Find ways to grow. Um, you know, think about what it's going to look like when it comes to it. And I know we don't like to think about it and as if it's not going to happen, but it will. And it's okay to think about it. You know, I was telling my husband, or I've told him a lot of times, but I was telling him this morning too, that I think our culture, American culture, Western culture, and that's the only culture that I'm immersed in that I know. So that's the one I'm going to speak about. Although I know everybody has subcultures and, it's different for everybody. But I'm just saying from the messaging that I received as part of this culture. I feel like we've been done a disservice when it comes to, what did I just do? I done messed up. Let me take this out. I did one side. See, it's just a neat little tack, just to kind of. It's not my mom's sewing, but I think it'll work out. But anyway, the one thing that I think we have been done a disservice with is the way that we think about life and death, and the way that we're taught to kind of feel about it and deal with it. And that was probably one of the biggest sources of my anxiety over the years. It was something, it was almost like taboo. Like death was not something we talked about. We didn't think about it. It was, or it is something that we try to avoid, which is wild. People do all kinds of stuff to try to avoid death. And instead of embracing it and thinking about it in a different way, which I feel like would be much more healthier, and it would just lend itself to a better quality of life, I think, mentally and emotionally. Because I feel like a lot of people spend a lot of time, probably where I was, like really highly anxious about death and about losing folks and about loss, and about their own death, right? And so I think being taught, not explicitly taught, but like I said, messages, right? You go to funerals, people are falling all out and crying and hooping and hollering and all the stuff when loved ones die. And just the messaging was not positive, right? It wasn't even thoughtful. It was just, you are sad beyond belief. Sometimes you never come back from that sadness. You never recover. Life is over, just all of that kind of stuff that just really is not, it's not helpful in managing death. And so, or managing loss. And so you know, I think about some of the other cultures that look at death so differently, um, like hubby's culture. I mean, they look at it as a loss too, but um, in Belize, they have a little bit more of a spiritual connection and practices when it comes to death. They have they celebrate in different ways and sing songs, and it's looked at as more of a natural process, inevitable process, and I think that makes it more palatable. Um, so anyway, I hope if there's one thing that I have given my kids in relation to thinking about life and purpose and relationships with people and loved ones and all of this stuff, is that death is a natural process. It is a necessary process. It can be a beautiful process, because once you have something that transitions, right, dies, it does transition. Out of it comes new things, right? New energy, new awareness, growth. As like I said, in my case, we start to see things differently and learn new things and understand things that have a lot of value and purpose. And you can't have that growth and learning and energies shifting and blossoming if you don't embrace the process and welcome it. That's a hard one, though. But you have to be able to first sift through the part of you that has to be human and go through the emotions first, right? Like, you can't reach, I don't think you could reach the understanding, at least I couldn't, of the higher kind of purpose of death until you sit with your raw feelings first and you cry all the tears you need to cry. Like, I'm kind of feeling a little weepy as I'm talking about it, because it's natural to cry and it's normal and it's okay, and you will cry, most of us. But you have to go through that part, and you have to go through, sometimes it's anger if that's connected to loss, you know. Um, so you have to be able to embrace that part and not try to change the fact that you're going to go through those things. And you don't need to make it look like what everybody wants it to look like, or what the TV tells you you should feel like or do when people die, or what your culture tells you, or it needs to be what you need it to be. Then once you get through that part, it's like you can welcome some of the other aha moments that are connected to that process. So I want my kids to get that piece. I mean, I talk to them about things all the time, but they're still young, you know. But I try to normalize death. I try to normalize feeling, all the feelings connected to loss. I try to normalize embracing, um, thinking about what it looks like when it's time for somebody to go, or when it's time for me to go, or when, I mean, just some of the things that we're taught to avoid and run from like the plague. Uh, so anyway, I do recognize that um, this is all easier said than done. I know that. I know that. Sometimes we don't even know what our bodies and our minds are going to do when we get to the moment of having to deal with stuff like this. I know that. I absolutely realize that. But the hope is that talking about it and recognizing it will kind of set a forum, create a forum for a different response and a different reaction to to it. That's the hope. That's the hope. So, I've been hearing people say a lot lately, um, I'm setting free my ancestors. Have y'all heard that? Something like that, right? Something along the lines of I'm breaking the generational trauma or generational curse or generational hardship or whatever it is. This is kind of what I feel like I'm doing with leaning into uh, death and loss as a rite of passage, like thinking about it as um, a rite of passage, right? Just like I said, something where there's some honor connected with the process. There's value in the process. There's learning in the process. There's growth in the process. There's um, gaining wisdom in the through the process. So I feel like me leaning into it in this way, I am setting free some of my ancestors who didn't have any other messages about death to give and never received anything else. That's how I feel. So I hope that makes sense to y'all. I didn't really plan on getting into a deep conversation about death. Like, who wants to turn on YouTube and be like, oh, I'm listening to a talk about death, right? I mean, maybe some people, but that wouldn't be my thing that I want to do on a weekend. But that's what's on my mind, I mean, why pretend like I'm something else and I'm bringing something else today to this video other than what really is happening inside of me and what's surfacing and bubbling and things like that. So I hope that I had a little bit of something in my message that could resonate with someone or help someone or support someone who's experiencing similar things. I hope that was you. All right. So anyway, I finished the pants. Check them out. They look good. They don't look too bad. I mean, he'll probably have a shirt kind of covering the top piece. It's not perfect, but once he, if these pants last long enough and he fills out a little bit in the waist, I can just take the stitching out and it'll be like it was before. So not bad for what my mama taught me. I'll see y'all later. Bye.